Hello, and welcome to the Innovia Conversation. I'm Steve Waltz.
And I'm Jeff Pergolski.
And today, Jeff, I'm trying to think, has it been a year since we did our last podcast? Summer kind of.
It hasn't been that.
Not quite a year, huh?
No, it's
been a couple of months.
But so we needed like a big gun to come back and help us with our return to podcast, right? So who do we have with us today?
We have Gary Harpenau with us today. Welcome, Gary.
Woo! Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jeff.
No way. How do we get Gary? I thought he was going to be out mapping processes at some customer site. We bring in Gary. That's just that. And at any company, there's a Gary. Bring in Gary. So let's introduce our listeners to Gary. Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Steve. So my background has been, I spent 29 years in the pharmaceutical industry, primarily in manufacturing. So I worked for an Indiana-based company, Eli Lilly and Company, and had a very long, successful career there. Took early retirement, and after spending many years of looking at manufacturing and process improvement, I decided to find something else to do, something new and something to learn more about. So I retired for about 18 months, spent my time marrying off one of my sons and graduating my daughter from college, and then became bored. So I decided to come back to work, and I started looking, bumped into Innovia, and found a pretty good match. So I think with my previous experience, and wanting to learn more about ERP systems, it's been a great match for a second career for me, which I'm enjoying very much in my second year here.
Nice. Sounds kind of familiar, Jeff. Worked for a pharma company, retired.
Tell me, what do you know about CRM?
Yeah.
But you guys are different pharma companies, right? Like you've got you. All right. So and you're just I always find this fascinating, but you're an account manager at Innovia, right? So part of our sales team, but with this wealth of knowledge. And so I guess that would lead us into so you've been at Innovia. This is your second year.
Yes, it is.
So what do you primarily do? I know that you are more than just an account manager, and we help our customers in other ways. So tell us a little bit about this kind of stuff you do at Innovia.
Yeah, so my primary job is a customer engagement specialist, basically managing accounts. One of the things that I truly enjoy and am passionate about is helping companies grow and drive improvement in their operations. So one of the things that we do is we meet with our clients on a regular basis and go out and seek to understand what areas that they're struggling with and how potentially an improvement in their ERP system could help them, either with producing data, managing data, efficiency out in the warehouse with some technology. So the nice thing is we get out to see our clients, and actually walk the floor with them, take a look at their strategic plans, and help them figure out what is the right path forward to improve their business model, improve their business processes, and gain those efficiencies that give them higher profits. So, I also, one of the side gigs that I've got at Innovia is I've used my previous background in process improvement. At Lilly, I spent a lot of time working in lean manufacturing and process improvement mapping. So I'm using some of those tools to step out and actually help clients, whether they're mine or anybody in Innovia. I've been able to help map out some processes, look for improvements, and drive those improvements across the organization.
That sounds pretty cool. Steve, before I completely monopolize this podcast, you have any questions?
Well, I think it's great. Well, Gary's my neighbor here in the South Bend office, is across the way there. So every once in a while, something kind of goes flying through the doors, but we won't go there. But the neat thing is Gary has gone around the world and done contract manufacturing, and he talks about lean, and process, and which is great for me because I came from the sales side, like the self aids to keep the manufacturing plants working, right? And so to kind of hear the back end more in depth of the process improvement, that lean concept, and then cross-functional teams and putting teams together, to see that Gary has that such a high level of expertise is this. It's really just great for, I mean, us, what you brought to our team, Gary. It's really been beneficial for all of us, but also, my gosh, for your customers. I'm sure you're walking in like, you did that for how long? And you went all over the world. I mean, it's just great to have that, to talk about it and having that fit, with a lot of our customers. Because Jeff, what do you think, about half our customers are heavy manufacturing distribution?
Yep. I'd say
You know,
so.
Steve, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's not just around process improvement for manufacturing. I mean, it can go. I mean, we've driven process improvement inside the financial systems, the purchasing process. We've got legal clients that you're anything where you're approving, cutting, work orders or service contracts or anything of that nature. You can always drive improvement. And so this process mapping exercise that we do actually could be done for any client, in manufacturing, in inside of accounting systems. I did it inside quality systems at Lilly, supply chain functions, warehousing, everything kind of goes into, if it's a process, we can improve it.
Very, very cool. And so did you go through any training for like change management, or just kind of learn along the way?
Well, we had a lot of change management at Lilly. I mean, obviously, a pharmaceutical, we're governed by the FDA. So change management was our life.
Yeah.
So that was kind of second nature. You automatically learned that as soon as you stepped in the door. Everything has to be documented. Everything has to be captured. So, I didn't go through formal training. We did Lilly training on that, but I bring a wealth of experience with change management. But the process mapping, I spent some time with Toyota, and I spent some time with another big company around the whole lean manufacturing side of it. So I actually spent some time learning the process through them, and then taking it back to Lilly and implemented it at the first site at Lilly. So.
Wow. So you went right to the source. Actually, after we kind of talked about it, I bought the book on Lean by Toyota.
Yeah.
An excellent book. And if you're looking to learn more about that, and, Gary, I don't know about, one of the challenges I had coming over from a large company like you was, I remember one of my first visits, this person, there was an ROI of doing an add-on that was 5 to 10,000. I mean, the cost was 5 to 10,000, but the ROI was 50 to 100,000. And they wouldn't make the change. And I'm just so glaring, like, you get 10 times an ROI. And, and I guess coming from a company where those numbers seem small to a small to medium sized business, those numbers are large.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, did you feel any of that type of coming over to a small SMB type of partner, or?
So, one of the things that when I retired and started thinking about a second career is I really wanted to work in that small to medium sized companies. I felt like there was a huge gap, because large companies like Lilly, Abbott, I mean, they have the resources and they can afford the resources, right? In smaller to medium sized companies, they have to be very careful about how much they can afford to spend, right, to drive improvements. So I think there's a big gap there where people have not looked in the mirror per se to say, have we got tunnel vision going on? Should we bring in an outside set of eyes to help us look at our processes and actually question why we do things? Because that's what it's really all about. It's questioning why you've always done it this way, and is there a better way to do it tomorrow? And it opens up a plethora of opportunity to the companies. And I think there's a big need there in the size companies that Innovia deals with.
Right. And I know we talk about it a lot as a team, like the 5 whys. the why is so important
Yeah.
versus the what. And I think, kind of the background we all have here and engaging with our customers. I mean, do you have any stories you want to share on just really maybe a company that by bringing that outside perspective and having that why conversation is maybe, either transformed or did something that really helped them be successful?
Yeah, I think I'll leave the name out, but there was a manufacturing company up in Wisconsin that we worked with, and they were really wanting to look at their pick pack process in their warehouse and their shipping process, and we mapped out the process itself. So we go through and we map out how it currently is being done.
Mhm.
And through that, you go backwards and you take that same map and you say, well, why do you do that step? Who does that step? And where does the paper go? And you can zero in on paper a lot because a lot of times people will pass paper around, and that's waste. So anytime you're looking at process improvement, you're zeroing in on what is being wasted. Is it time? Is it motion? Is it resources? I mean, in a warehouse, the biggest waste in a warehouse is people walking. Okay. If you don't, if your person walks down to the other end, picks up one package, comes back, picks up another package, goes down, picks up another package, their back and forth motion is a waste of time. And if you can help zero in that and say, why aren't you organizing your picks based upon the current location in the warehouse and route them through your warehouse?
Right.
There's software packages out there that will do that for you. And so we gained a lot of opportunity. And so at the end of process mapping, current state, and then you go to future state and say, here's what we want it to look like. And then you say, what kind of improvements do we need to get there?
Mhm.
And then you lay that out on a grid and you decide what's your top priorities, and then you go after that. But we came forward with a fairly large ROI, and justified a project to actually go in and actually do a complete warehouse project with them, where I'm actually helping them do the warehouse project, to where we'll implement handheld barcoding, the full gamut of a warehouse process to get those efficiencies out.
Very cool. Did you visit Jeff when you were in Wisconsin?
I didn't go that far north, so
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure
I
I'm
would
probably
have.
busy, so I'm not offended at all, Gary. I was gonna ask. I've got two questions if I can keep them both in my head long enough. So first of all, when when I've been involved in projects like this, sometimes I'm surprised at just the benefit of not even the future state, but just how many companies benefit from the fact that they don't know what their processes are. Like the
Right.
warehouse team isn't aware of why accounting is sending, why do we get like a stack of 30 sheets every morning, and then like I was with Mary, we were with a customer, found out that like there was like 28 steps to like pick an order, and everyone in the company was like, oh, like this is ridiculous, and the warehouse people were like, yeah, like that's why so
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the thing that I'm surprised with. I bet you see that a lot, just the fact that the process mapping project can help bring the organization together and shed light to across different functional areas of companies.
Yeah, and that's the piece where you're trying to get them to look in the mirror and see what they look like in true fashion. That's what a process map does. A lot of people have never written it down.
Right.
They talk about it, they do it, but they've never seen it on paper. Once it's on paper, you're like, it can be embarrassing. And I always warn people up front, this is not about blaming anybody for the inefficiencies. This is about fixing the problem. So focus on where we should go with this and not why are we here. Let's talk about why we're here enough to get us to move forward. And that's it.
All right. So my follow-up is sort of around the details of what process mapping engagement looks like. Because I can remember, oh, so many years ago, I went through a process mapping engagement with one of my clients, and heaven help them, Alan Wine, our CEO at the time, was doing it. And I showed up, had some travel issues, showed up like 2 hours late to the meeting. I entered into this conference room, and there was Alan with like 2/3 of the wall covered in sticky notes. His shirt was unbuttoned, he was a little sweaty, like people were like getting agitated. But so what does that in like sort of overall, do we break it down like where we do different functional areas, and is there like an approximate cost of that to our customers that we can speak to, or is it too wildly varied that?
Yeah, the cost is always kind of it's on an as needed basis. I mean, because it really depends on your I'll call it your bookends of where you're starting and where you're ending the process. So in the case of the client up in Wisconsin, we went all the way from putting a order in all the way to shipping. That was a large, and we ended up breaking it into about 4 different maps. So to say here's what it costs to do a map, it's hard to tell. It really depends on how much of the span of the process you're going to look at. When it turn, you described it perfectly, Jeff. I mean, what you're doing is you're getting a group of experts on the process in a room, and you need to have high level down to low level. Don't think that you can get a bunch of managers in a room and do a process map, because you're going to get rose-colored glasses. And so you got to have people that disagree and correct people, and you got to have an open and transparent conversation to really get that current state map documented. And then going to the future state, you're basically taking those sticky notes, and we use sticky notes primarily because you move it around a lot. Someone will say, well, there's a step before that, and if you're trying to write it on a board, you got to do a lot of erasing. Well, these sticky notes we just move around, and we do go from function to function. So in a process map, you will look at, let's just take a work order through a manufacturing process. It's going to touch purchasing, it's going to touch the warehouse, it's going to touch the manufacturing component, financial component. So all these functions are listed down the y-axis, and you kind of just move the sticky notes around of who's doing what and when. How many times does it go from this function to the other function and back and forth when, especially in the approval process, there seems to be a lot of waste when it comes to how they route things and how they wait on things. But cost wise, I would go back and say, look, tell me the scope. I can quickly assess how many steps are going to be in that process, how many functions are going to be involved, and how long it's going to take us to get through it. And then I usually provide a quick estimate.
Gotcha. All right.
I think to add to that, Gary, if that's all right, Jeff, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Please, Steve, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jeff. But Gary, when I think one of the first times I kind of got involved with one of those type process mapping, I didn't realize it was called process mapping at the time. But what I learned was that what's your strategy? You got to have a defined strategy and backing from the leadership team. And I remember the first one I went into, the person who's running the meeting said, everyone in this room is equal stakeholders.
Right.
Right. It doesn't matter if you're a VP or the person filling the box up, right, or the whatever. Everybody had equals, they're equal shareholder. What else I liked about it was that it's a mantra that I was drilled in. If all the stakeholders are together in the room, or now one teams, right, and there's enough information to make a decision, you make a decision. No one leaves. Right. And I think the cool thing about that is it does. If it's for the benefit of the company, and if you don't have a forced deadline, because you have to hash it out, right? There's going to be somebody in that room usually leaves not really happy, but a lot of people in that room leave pretty excited, right? I don't know if there's anything you want to expand on that.
Yeah, so well, let me clarify that. So my philosophy, and the philosophy I've been trained on, is that you don't go for consensus. You go for alignment, and you go for people grabbing the burlap and holding on to it and saying, I support this. regardless whether I agree with it or not, I will support this. So you look for full support in that room, but not consensus. So if a person says, I don't like that, well, can you live with it? Can you work with it? And if, as long as the person nods their head yes, then you move forward. If you tried to get consensus on every step and every improvement, yeah, it would be a non-starter, because there are a lot of opinions and a lot of people with different perspectives in that room. What you're looking for is what's best for the company, and don't lose sight of that. You're not looking for what makes my job easier. You're looking for what makes it more productive, more efficient. And if it's easier for you, that's a bonus. But that's what we're after in that room. That help?
Oh, it did. And I think
Yeah.
you kind of, the way you summed it up, right? It's just because if I don't agree with Gary, doesn't mean I don't like Gary or respect Gary, right? It's for the benefit of the company
Right.
to do its job. And it does affect people, and and it can get emotional sometimes. I've
Oh,
seen it that way. But when you pull back and you see the success of it and know that you're part of it. I remember a couple times I scratched my head, why are they thinking about doing that? Then about a year later, I'm like, boy, I'm glad I was involved in that decision.
right.
So, but yeah, good points.
So one of the other things that, people, you need a strong sponsor, somebody at a fairly high level that can make decisions and support you at I'll call it at the C-suite level, when it comes time to fund the improvements. What I've found, that happens a lot is people will sign up for process mapping and go through the whole exercise. And then when it comes time to actually drive improvements, they fail to resource it. So, and typically it's not money, it's people's time. So if you don't feel like you have the bandwidth to actually implement improvements, why go through the pain of process mapping? So I always encourage people to say up front, do you have the bandwidth to execute improvement? If you do, then let's get through this and let's go. Otherwise, let's wait until you do have that bandwidth, and then let's try to um, time it to where we get the process mapping done, and then we drive the improvements right away. Because people come out of those sessions excited. They want to see those improvements. I've invested all this time sitting in a room fighting over this. Let's see it happen. So yeah, that resourcing is critical, and that sponsor plays a big role in that, because I usually have that conversation with him or her. I shouldn't. Yeah.
To you, Jeff.
Like basically, I think I heard someone refer to the general description of a podcast is just two people talking over each other. So, perfect alignment here. We've got three, but all right. So I think that that sounds like a really interesting part of how you help our customers at Innovia. So, what else in terms of just your first 2 years at Innovia? What do you think about, like, here? I think we're talking about, is Innovia a good place to work? Like, what do you feel about the team? You came from this like giant company down to this small company, and just like Steve, you've successfully navigated the pitfalls of whatever that means. But
Right.
like, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel these 2 years pulling you out of retirement? What do you think of, like, who's your favorite account manager? That used to be a
Well, it's Kevin, of course.
oh, great answer.
No, it's been a great, I'll call it a breath of fresh air for me. I like being part of a small company, and I say small, kind of tongue in cheek, because we've grown about 3x for when I started. So we're growing fast, and but the feeling inside the company is still small, meaning that we still have full access to our owner, our CEO. I mean, you don't have to worry about the company politics. And in a large corporation, Steve can attest to this, there's a lot of politics. And so it's nice not to have to worry about that and maneuver around that. Um, and there's always people there to help you, especially like you, Jeff. I mean, if I've got a licensing issue, I know I can call on you. You can help me out. I don't have to be an expert in all ERP or aspects. And so the willingness for people to help each other inside the company has been fantastic. It's helped me learn more of the software side of it because I came in more from a user perspective than I did a software knowledge based person. So it's been almost essential, but it's been a pleasure working with everybody inside the company, and it remains fun. As I told Tom Doran when I first started, Tom, as long as it's fun, I'll stay. I like having fun at work. I spend way too much time at work for not having fun. When it becomes not fun, then I may be looking for something else. But it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it, and Novi is a great place to work.
Yeah, I would agree. It's funny because in my 13 years here, we were like 30 some people. And to me, that felt like, this felt like a big company. We were working certainly within our client base at bigger organizations as well. So I look at this as like, wow, this is corporate America. And then you guys come from the other perspective. This is
30,000 people.
Right. Yeah. Your question or your comment though. So what system what's ERP system were you used to before you came to Innovia?
Yeah, so I worked in Oracle first as well. We had a homegrown one before Oracle. We went through Oracle and then we went into SAP. So they're giants, but for a large corporation, they're probably necessary. But when I look at Microsoft ERP systems, it's so much more user friendly and so much easier to navigate through and get information out of. Um, you kind of had to go back to somebody in IT to get a report out of SAP. And then they would write it for you. And then if you wanted to change it, you'd have to. And most of the time, we would export to Excel anyway. And so it was a giant. But as I transitioned to Microsoft, it was definitely a pleasant experience.
Interesting. Yeah, I just like getting those perspectives from people
Yep.
coming from other worlds and sort of what that's like because I went from running a small business on QuickBooks to using Dynamics NAV to enter my time as a network engineer when I started at Innovia, and so I didn't have a lot of experience with other systems. So I get kind of tunnel vision, and I always like to hear other perspectives. So, I mean, we're getting to that point. Steve, do you have any final questions for Gary?
Let's see. I know, Gary, we talked a lot about, the process mapping side, but as an account manager, it's really owning the account. And, we talk about that internally. And one of the things that kind of, we talked about the culture when I came over was, you know, when we say we're going to take care of you, we mean it because, Gary, I think as you're finding out in the ERP world and a lot of add-ons and
Right.
so many things can go on that when I talk with potential clients or when our current clients is that at the end of the day somebody needs to own the account,
Right.
and the customer engagement specialist does, and it's to help to minimize the finger pointing. And when the model, when I came, we were talking about, I'm like, so we're going to have these people that are highly skilled that have been there and done it in business, and we're not going to charge our customers for that.
Right.
That consulting mindset tells you, how do you do that? We talk about it because the cost of acquisitions, if you don't lose customers, you don't need to replace them as much, right?
Right.
But as far as that, that model for you, when you go visit your customers, do you see, once you kind of get to know them a little bit more, that they start engaging more, or I guess any, how when you first heard about that approach, I guess your thoughts on that approach, and how do you see it helping you do your job and customers succeed?
Yeah, so I think the approach fit me really well because, the last thing you want to do is be talking to a customer, a client, and have them looking at their watch, worrying about how much time and how much money they're spending while they're talking to you. No one's going to want to spend time with a person. So going in and not charging our time and having that open, transparent conversation, it has worked extremely well, not only for us, but for our customers. They love to see that, they're getting value from a person that brings experience from an outside perspective, and they're not worried about the clock. So um, it just makes the whole relationship go to a different level. And I think that's a key. When we're at Innovia, we focus for the long haul. As you said, we don't look for high turnover companies. We're looking for somebody that's going to stay a partner for a long time. And so let's get that relationship built where we can be open and transparent with each other. And we're all aligned to what drives their company's performance.
Mhm.
It works extremely well. If I had to go out and start something similar to this, it would be a great model to follow.
Oh, that's an aside discussion.
That's
Just kidding,
good.
Gary.
No.
Anyway, well, we're excited to have you on the team. Gary's another Hoosier,
Yep.
so it's great to have
Born and
another
raised.
born and raised. So it's great to have another Hoosier. And I think Jeff, let's see. I'm thinking, how do you find Gary? I mean, we can find Gary's picture on our website, right? Under a list there. But Gary, how else can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So I've got a LinkedIn account. Please reach out to me, request, contact, and always looking for new contacts out there. I don't do Facebook, so that may be a positive or a negative, but
Yeah.
that's a social media that I've not tapped into for business. I do it for family and share pictures, things like that. But LinkedIn, and I'm available through the website as well.
Is it true? Steve told me that you've got a secret Twitter account that's under Process Map Princess. Is that
Oh,
That is not
that's
true.
he twisted my words there, Gary. He twisted my words. Just be on the record. Neat thing. And as an account manager, Gary is non-billable. However, if what we do, Jeff was a hybrid too. Jeff did some IT consulting, so Gary can do process mapping, and those would be billable engagements. But normally, your account manager is non-billable, and before I retire, I want to do one billable hour before I go, right? I'm cheap and easy from what I heard, right?
and also, Steve, you're gonna get one certification, right? One
I am.
certification, one billable hour.
I'm going to be certified in something, right?
Well, you've already been like nominated to be like a user group all-star. Like you got all sort of impressive credentials, Steve.
Right. Now, I'll have to take a Microsoft test someday. Can I have you over my shoulder, or are we on video when we do that? So anyway, but great, Gary. Once again, thank you very much. And for all our listeners, you can find us all on LinkedIn, on our website at Innovia.com. Copy of the podcast would be on there under resources under podcast. A lot of past webinars and upcoming webinars are on there. We're on Twitter and on Facebook. And Jeff,
well, before we.
Oh, wait a second. That's a first.
Because you're going somewhere cool next week, right? Like we should. It's like for those of us that don't get to go, we got to live vicariously through you. So where are you going next week? Tell us about that. Tell us about what Innovia's doing next week.
So by the time you listen to this podcast, Gary and I will be back from going to NAVUG Summit in Houston, Texas.
Gary gets to go too? No way.
I do.
That's right.
All the cool kids will be there.
Yeah. Presenting on how to convince your boss to drive change.
Wow. All right. And Steve, what are you presenting on?
What do you think I'm presenting on, Jeff?
Manufacturing.
It's going to be a deep dive into the new coding base here on the AL Visual Studio Code. Doing cracking the CRM code.
Nice.
It's among all the user groups, and it's actually going to have a virtual presence. So if you're not going on site, you can watch it virtually. Actually, Gary's session too, I think. So
I might have to attend from lowly old Neenah, Wisconsin. All right. Sorry to slow you up, Steve. I'm now ready to wrap up this podcast.
all right. Well, I think you're going to wrap this one up, so I'll let you have the honors.
It seems like so much pressure. What do I say?
You can do it, Jeff. I have faith in you.
This podcast is over.